Hi, I'm Sandra. Growing up in a family where the scales always seemed tipped was never easy. My brother David was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. Then there was me, always in the background, the afterthought. I met Liam 2 years ago at a friend's art exhibit. He was different, kind, attentive, and incredibly supportive. We connected instantly, bonding over our love for indie films and old books. When he proposed last spring under the blooming cherry blossoms at our favorite park, I said yes without a second thought. We were thrilled, dreaming of a small but beautiful wedding. I even had a wedding fund my parents had promised me, just like they had given David 3 times over. But everything started to fall apart one Sunday afternoon during a family dinner. David announced his 3rd engagement, and the room filled with congratulations and toasts while I sat there, a fake smile plastered on my face. Later, when I casually mentioned my wedding plans to my parents, the room went silent. "You know, Sandra, we had to use some of your wedding fund for David's ceremony," my dad said, not meeting my eyes. "He needed it more, you understand, right?" I felt as though I'd been punched in the gut. "Use some of it? What does that mean?" I managed to ask. My mom's voice was unusually sharp as she added, "Well, it's all gone. We thought you'd take longer to find someone, given your history. David needed it." Just like that, it was gone. I could barely keep the tremor out of my voice. "You promised me. You promised that the money was for my wedding. How could you decide on your own to give it all to David?" "It was necessary, Sandra. Your brother has gone through a lot with his divorces. He needed a fresh start, a proper wedding to set things right," my dad explained, as if it made perfect sense to erase my dreams for David yet again. "And what about me? Don't I deserve a fresh start too?" I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I've been planning and saving with Liam, counting on that fund." My mom's response was cold, dismissive. "You should have been more proactive about your relationships, Sandra. We made a decision based on necessity." I left the dinner early, my heart racing and my mind reeling. Liam was waiting for me at home, and seeing his face was the only thing that felt right. That night, I broke down. We talked for hours and decided that we wouldn't let this destroy our plans. "We'll have our wedding, Sandra, no matter what," Liam reassured me, holding me close. We downsized everything, chose a smaller venue, cut down the guest list, and made homemade decorations. It wasn't the wedding I had imagined, but it would be ours, filled with love, not the weight of betrayal. That night, as I lay beside Liam, a sense of resolve settled over me. My parents had made their choice, and now I was making mine. They would not dictate my happiness. This was the beginning of my new life with Liam, free from favoritism and unfair compromises. The anger and hurt boiled inside me for days after discovering their betrayal. I needed answers, so I arranged to meet my parents for coffee one chilly morning. The air was as tense and cold as my nerves. As soon as we sat down, I couldn't hold back. "Why did you do it? Why did you give David my wedding fund without even discussing it with me?" My dad sighed, rubbing his forehead. "We thought we were making the right choice. David's situation was urgent. He needed to settle down after everything he's been through." "And what about me? What about my wedding?" My voice broke, the hurt evident. My mom looked around nervously, her voice low. "Your brother needed more support, Sandra. You've always been the strong one. So that's it. You decide on my behalf because I'm strong. You spend my wedding fund as if it's nothing." The disbelief and hurt mixed into a bitter cocktail of emotions. "We didn't think you'd be getting married so soon," my dad added, trying to justify their decision. "Honestly, we thought you might back out, considering your past relationships. That's not your decision to make. It was my fund, promised to me. How could you gamble my dreams away on David's 3rd attempt at marriage?" I couldn't hide the scorn in my voice. The conversation grew heated as they piled on justifications, each one striking a nerve. They talked about family obligations and supporting each other, but all I heard was their clear preference for David. Finally, I stood up, my chair scraping loudly. "This isn't just about money. It's about trust, about respect. You've shown where your priorities lie, and sadly, it's not with me." Leaving the cafe, I felt both liberated and sorrowful. The confrontation had laid everything bare. The parents I thought I knew prioritized David over me without remorse. The emotional toll was heavy, and I spent nights ruminating over every word exchanged. It was clear they saw David as the one who needed protection, while I was just expected to cope and move on, always the resilient one. In the weeks that followed, Liam and I continued planning our wedding. We chose a quaint local park for the ceremony, a stark contrast to the lavish venues David had enjoyed. Our decorations were simple but beautiful, handmade with care and love. Our guest list included only those who truly cared for us. No pretenses, no forced smiles. When I sent out the invitations, I made a conscious decision not to include my parents. It hurt, but it was a necessary step to protect my own well-being. They had chosen their path, and now I was choosing mine. Planning our modest wedding became a healing process. With each decision, I reclaimed a piece of myself that had been overshadowed by my family's expectations and favoritism. Liam stood by me, his support unwavering. We were building something true and lasting, far from the shadows of betrayal. This wasn't just about creating a wedding day, but about laying the foundation for our future. A future where our choices mattered and where we were free from the weight of unfair family dynamics. Our wedding day dawned bright and beautiful, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions that had led up to it. The park was bathed in the golden glow of the morning sun, the air fresh and filled with the scent of blooming flowers. It was simple, nothing like the opulent affairs David had, but it was perfect for us. Liam and I had chosen every detail with care, from the wildflowers that lined the makeshift aisle to the gentle acoustic music that played in the background. Our friends and a few family members gathered, their faces bright with genuine happiness and love. There were no ostentatious displays, no unnecessary pomp, just a heartfelt celebration of two people committing to each other. As I walked down the aisle, my heart was full. I glanced at Liam, and the look in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. We were doing this right. Our vows were promises of support and companionship, spoken from the heart. When we kissed, the applause from our small group of guests felt like the sweetest music. We spent the day laughing, dancing, and sharing stories. The reception was a joyous, intimate gathering with homemade food and decorations that our friends helped create. It was a true reflection of who we were as a couple, not just a spectacle for the sake of others. Later, as we shared our wedding photos online, the reactions were immediate and overwhelmingly positive. Friends and distant relatives congratulated us, celebrating the happiness that shone through every picture. However, not everyone was pleased. When my parents saw the photos on social media, their reaction was a mix of shock and fury. They hadn't expected to be excluded, despite everything that had transpired. How could she not invite us to her own wedding? My mother's text read, brimming with indignation and hurt. After everything we've done for her. My father's response was colder and more cutting. Ungrateful. After all the years of support, clearly she's chosen her path. Their messages were a jarring note in our otherwise perfect day, but I had expected them and was prepared. With Liam's hand in mine, I felt strong enough to face the fallout. The next family gathering was tense as news of our decision spread. Whispers and sideways glances followed me whenever I entered the room. Some family members approached, questioning why I hadn't included my parents and hinting at the need for family unity. But as I explained my reasons, with Liam and those who understood supporting me, I felt a resolve within myself. This was about setting boundaries, about respecting our own needs and happiness above toxic family expectations. Despite the backlash, there was also an unexpected outpouring of support. Several cousins and aunts reached out privately, expressing their understanding and sharing their own stories of dealing with family pressures. It was comforting and reaffirming, a reminder that we weren't alone in our struggle for independence and respect. As the days turned into weeks, the initial shock from my parents faded into a strained silence. They made no further attempts to confront me directly, perhaps finally realizing the depth of their mistake. Liam and I moved forward, our bond strengthened by the trials we have faced together. Our wedding wasn't just a ceremony, it was a declaration of our commitment to live on our terms, free from the shadows and expectations that had long clouded my life. It was our first step into a future where our choices and our love were the only things that truly mattered. A few weeks after our wedding, during a routine phone call, the tone shifted abruptly. My mom's voice was strained, laced with a faint casualness. "You know, Sandra, your father and I have been thinking. It's not right what happened. We should have a proper family wedding. A big one where we can invite everyone." I paused, letting the request sink in. Mom, Liam, and I are already married. We had our wedding, the one we wanted. But that was just a tiny thing, she pressed. We're talking about something significant, where we can celebrate with all our friends and family. Think about your father, how much it would mean to him. The conversation took a darker turn when my dad came on the line, his voice unusually somber. "I've been feeling very unwell lately, Sandra. The doctor mentioned stress could be aggravating my heart. Not seeing you get married properly is taking its toll." The guilt trip was palpable, making my heart race with a mix of anger and sadness. I knew this game, their manipulation had shaped much of my life. But this time, I was no longer the child they could sway with guilt. "Dad, I'm sorry you're feeling unwell, but our wedding has already happened. It was real and meaningful to us. You choosing not to support us beforehand doesn't give you the right to demand a redo now." There was a heavy pause on the line, then my mother's voice, sharper this time. "You're being very selfish, Sandra. After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By embarrassing us in front of our friends?" The old me might have caved, apologized, and tried to mend things, but I had grown, fortified by Liam's love and the support of true friends. "No, Mom. What's embarrassing is using your daughter's wedding fund for your son's third marriage without a second thought. Liam and I are happy with how we celebrated our love, and that's all that matters." The call ended abruptly, their words hanging in the air like a bitter aftertaste. I knew this wasn't the end of it, but I felt a newfound strength within me. I wasn't the same person who once feared their disapproval. Days later, a letter arrived, formal and cold. It was an invoice detailing every expense my parents had ever incurred on my behalf, from school fees to the smallest of loans. At the bottom, a note read, "Since you've chosen to exclude us from your life, we believe it's fair you assume these costs." Liam and I laughed hollowly over the absurdity of the document. "Are they serious?" he asked, eyebrows raised. "It's just another manipulation tactic," I said, ripping the letter in half. "But it won't work this time." We decided together that it was time to cut ties officially. I drafted an email, clear and firm, outlining why I was distancing myself from them. It highlighted their lack of respect for my autonomy and their continuous attempts to manipulate my emotions. After sending the email, I felt a surge of freedom mixed with inevitable sadness. It wasn't just about separating from my parents, it was about reclaiming my life. In the weeks that followed, the air around us seemed clearer, our decisions unclouded by guilt or obligation. We were building a life on our own terms, and every small victory felt like a triumph. Their demands for a second wedding and their manipulations had only strengthened my resolve. Liam and I were united, our foundation built on mutual respect and understanding, not on the shifting sands of familial approval. This chapter of my life was about standing firm in my beliefs, about not letting guilt and manipulation dictate my choices. It was about living a life true to myself, and that was the greatest freedom I could have ever claimed. The weeks following my decision to formally distance myself from my parents were filled with a profound, liberating silence. However, that quiet was abruptly broken by a surprise visit from my parents. One afternoon, they showed up at our doorstep unannounced, their faces a mix of determination and feigned concern. "Sandra, we need to talk," my mom said, stepping forward as if to embrace me. I held up my hand, stopping her mid-stride. "There's nothing left to discuss," I replied firmly. "You received my email. I meant every word." My dad's expression hardened. "We're still your parents, Sandra. You can't just cut us out like we mean nothing. I gave you both every chance to be part of my life in a respectful, supportive way. You chose not to take those opportunities," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "What you call meaning nothing is actually me setting boundaries." They attempted to argue, to plead their case, but I was resolute. Liam and I deserve to live in peace without manipulation and guilt-tripping. This is my final decision. The confrontation reached its peak with a clarity that felt almost surreal. "Mom, Dad, I wish things were different, but they aren't. Please respect my wishes and do not contact me again." I stated the finality in my voice, mirroring the closure I sought. After a few moments of tense silence, they left, and with their departure, I felt a weight lift. I blocked their numbers, their emails, and all social media connections. It was a drastic step, but a necessary one that marked the beginning of a truly independent life. In the months that followed, Liam and I thrived. We decorated our small apartment, celebrated each other's successes, and supported one another through challenges. Life without the constant stress of familial expectations was lighter, more joyful. We often spent evenings talking about our dreams and the future we were building together. Each conversation, each plan we made, was a stitch in the new fabric of our life, one untainted by the shadows of the past. One evening, as we sat watching the sunset from our balcony, Liam took my hand. "Do you ever regret it, cutting ties?" he asked gently. I squeezed his hand, my heart full of peace. No, because it led us here, to this moment, to a life where we are respected and loved for who we are, not for what we can give. Reflecting on everything, I realized the importance of choosing one's own path. It wasn't just about escaping toxicity. It was about honoring oneself, about living a life filled with genuine love and respect. I learned that sometimes the hardest decisions are the most necessary, and that true happiness often requires us to stand firm against the very forces that claim to love us the most. Liam and I planned trips, explored new hobbies, and built a community of friends who shared our values. We were no longer defined by my familial past, but by the choices we made each day. As I share this story, I hope it serves as a reminder that while family can be a source of great love and support, it should never come at the cost of our self-respect or happiness. Independence isn't just about physical distance, it's about emotional and mental freedom, the kind that allows us to be truly ourselves. Thank you for being part of my journey. Your support means the world. Remember, always choose a path that respects and uplifts you. Stay true, stay bold, and never settle for less than what you deserve. This brings us to the end of Sandra's story. Now, I'd like to hear from you. Do you think Sandra was right to cut ties with her family to preserve her well-being and happiness? Or do you believe there could have been another way to handle the situation? This is a tough decision, and often there's no clear right or wrong answer. Please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below.